Hi, I'm Danielle, and this is Chatter Out Loud, a podcast where I share thoughts and TV commentary, starting with one of my favorite shows, Big Brother. In this episode, I'm sharing a recap of Big Brother 23, Episode 2. The episode starts with a recap of premiere night, the BB Beach theme, the twists, and the additional $250,000 added to the grand prize, and the house guests' reaction to it. We saw the opening of the show with all of the house guests dancing to the Big Brother theme song. And I like the neon light logo and the blue background. I thought the colors popped, and it always looks fun when they do this. All of the house guests looked like they were having fun doing it as well. And I thought it was really cute. So I enjoyed that opening. So if you've been watching the live feeds, it wouldn't be a surprise to you that they purposefully aired Frenchie promising safety to all the house, or not all the house guests, to a number of house guests. I mean, they barely finished the HOH competition. They're making their way back into the house, and then Frenchie starts. First, he tells Tiffany that she has his word that she'll be safe for the week. And so just park that in your mind, and we'll come back to that in a minute. In Big Brother fashion, part of the show includes showing us the gameplay coupled with the confessionals from the house guests. So one of the first confessionals we saw was Frenchie trying to explain why he decided not to take Julie's offer. And in short, he wanted to maintain the HOH safety for both he and his team. That was the bottom line to that. Since each of the house guests shared a little bit about their strategy in the first episode, it was interesting to see Azah in her confessional when she had to shift her strategy for gunning after the first HOH. And the shift was because this week's HOH was her team member, Frenchie. It's part of that expect the unexpected, right? All the house guests go in with a specific strategy, and then it has to shift and pivot based on what's thrown at them. Christian's confessional, he mentioned that he was pretty bummed because he and his team lost and they were the have-nots of the week. Travis's confessional was pretty interesting to me because that was the most I think I've heard him say throughout the whole game. Although I think later in the week, this week, we'll see more of him coming up in the conversation. And I'm basing this off of what I've seen on the live feed. So it's going to be interesting moving forward, just to see a little bit more Travis. So going back into the house, they show the interactions between the house guests, one being with Sarah Beth, and she's sticking with her voice actress occupation cover. She doesn't want to reveal that she's a forensic scientist because that may be a disadvantage for her. She doesn't want to appear too smart. And after a while, all the house guests convene to the living room for their introductions. And we see this every year where they sit on the couch and go around to share a little bit about themselves. During this time, they cut to Xavier's confessional to show us his reaction to the pretty women in the house. He made reference to Sarah Beth, Hannah, Azah, Whitney, and Alyssa. And I'm trying to figure out how I can see a type, but all those women they're all beautiful. They're all just so different. So it just was kind of funny to see his reaction to all of them. That's all. And I believe in his bio, he has no problem with flirting. And I think I see a little bit of this on the live feeds, but I'm convinced it's more of a strategic gameplay than an actual interest in starting or, getting into a showmance. But we'll have to see, right? In terms of the other impressions that the house guests made of others, Frenchie's impression of Travis, Brent, Xavier, and Christian were that they were meatheads. I just find that rich for him to be calling someone else a meathead. One thing that they did make sure that the BB fans and viewers, they made sure that we learned in this episode Frenchie's promise of safety to a lot of people on day one. So they made it a point to show us the promises he made on day one. And earlier I asked you to remember that Tiffany was promised safety by Frenchie. But what we didn't see and what they did show, what we didn't know, I should say, but they aired on the show last night, was the promise he made to the group members that entered the home with him. Big Brother cut to that footage where he was giving fist bumps or daps to Derek F., Travis, and Xavier, promising, or he was doing the fist bump, solidifying their safety if he won HOH. And so by my count, between Tiffany and these three guys, that's up to 4 people now that he has promised safety to. And so just hold on to that number. We'll pick that back up a little later. So next they pan to the have-not room. And this year, one of the beds is a jet ski. And when I first saw that, I thought it was so funny. It was just ridiculous. And if you aren't aware, each year they have a have-not room, and it's supposed to be a room with absolutely no luxuries. The beds are hard, and they're made of different objects other than a mattress and a bed spring. You know, they have drywall, they have the wood, crates, the jet ski, as I mentioned. So the conditions of the room is that they have not. Get it? So then they cut back to Frenchie. They continue on this common thread with Frenchie's gameplay. And I believe that's specifically because he is the HOH, right? They want to share with us, they want us to capture his thoughts and his reasoning that's leading up to this nomination. So in the next scene, we see Derek F. and Frenchie in one of the back bedrooms where they bond and make a final 2 deal with one another. They go back to Frenchie and his observations. Now he's making observations of other people in the game. And somewhere along the line, he is now convinced that Christian and Alyssa are in a showmance. And now he's calling himself the showmance killer. Like, this is all the stuff that's running through his mind on day one. In the next breath, he is not nominating any women this week. So he thinks that by not nominating or declaring that he's not going to nominate any women in the week, he thinks this approach is going to get him longevity in the game. But will it really? I'm of the opinion that it will not. But I've been wrong before. I'm hoping his foolery all this week will not gain him longevity in the game. But we'll have to see. Anyway, they cut back to him talking to Alyssa, saying she will not be a nominee. They cut to Tiffany's, where he says the same thing. And then they show where he's working his way through all of the women in the house, sharing the same message, that no women will be nominated. So if I were to think about this logically, think of this. There's 16 house guests that enter the home. He's now already promised that no women will be nominated. That's half the cast. So now there's 8 people that won't be nominated. Plus, he made the promise of safety to the group he entered the house with. That's 3 men. That's Xavier, Travis, and Derek F. So that brings the count up to 11. So 8 women, 3 men, that's 11 people. And he's the HOH. That's 12. So 12 people are unavailable. He can't nominate himself. That's why I'm counting him. So 12 people are now unavailable or can't be selected based on his promise. He can't choose 12 people. Now, think about that. So we went down from 16 15 potential nominees down to now, what did I say? There's 12. So that's 4 people. So he only had 4 players to choose from based on his promise alone. Not to mention, which they didn't air on the show last night, but on the live feeds, he repeatedly said he was not going to nominate a person of color. So out of the 4 remaining people to choose from, that would eliminate 2 of those 4 people. So now there's only 2 people left to nominate, and that would be Christian and Brent. But we'll see why that quickly fades. I'll talk about that in a minute. So going back to Frenchie and his confessional, where he makes a declaration that he is about to shake things up. Then they cut to Brent entering his head of household. And remember, Christian and Brent were the 2 options based on his promise of nominating no women, not nominating anyone in the group he entered the home with, and not nominating any person of color. It's Brent and Christian. Those are the 2 people he have left to choose. Brent now enters the HOH room, and he and Frenchie are having a bonding moment, right? Brent shared a story about his dad, and it was touching. They hug it out, and if I'm honest, this was one of the few times that the only time that I have ever been empathetic towards Brent. And I'll just leave it at that. So let's fast forward a little. By the time Brent leaves the room, he was no longer Frenchie's target. He wanted to move on to someone else now, and that someone else was now Christian. And if we go back to tallying who he'd be able to nominate with all of his promises made to the house guests, now that he likes Brent, there's only one person, so Christian. So Christian is the person he would nominate. And in the game of Big Brother, you nominate two people. It's just, there's no logic with Frenchie. All right, so we come back from the second break. They enter into the Wildcard Competition. The music starts playing in the living room. They show the Wildcard Competition picture on the screen. All the house guests run to the living room monitor, and that's where they learn. The head of household shares that there will be a twist, or this is a twist, and they share the name of the competition, the Wild Card Competition, and then he explains the rules. So the rules of the Wild Card Competition are: one player in the competition from each team will play. The jokers are not eligible to play, or I should say the winning team of the week are not eligible to play because they already have safety for the week. And only one player from the remaining three teams can play, and it's an individual gameplay, an individual safety, I should say. The team has to decide which person on the team will play, and if they can't make a decision, fate decides. And by fate, that means the HOH picks the name out of a bag. So each player can only have one turn until every team member has had an opportunity to play. So I'm wondering how long this twist will last, and what happens when the teams get down to like only one player left on the team. I mean, something will have to change. I wonder if the team members will shift or rotate or something. But this can't be throughout the duration of the game, because at some point it's not going to be a fair thing if there's only, there's 4 team members on one team and then only one on the other, unless they have like stipulation where if there's only 2, like the one team has 2 players, so the other teams will have to select 2 people to play, so it can be 2 people from each team or something like that. Anyway, the team members that were picked for the wild card competition were Kyland, and he's on the Queen's team. Christian is on the King's team, and Hannah, and she got drawn out of a bag because that team couldn't decide. But Hannah's playing from the Aces team. And I like this twist because it's another chance at safety, and it really can help someone have a second chance or a longer stay in the game. So the players suit up for the game. I always like the costumes that they have throughout the season. This one, they had the headbands and the shiny pants, and it reminded me of an 80s type theme. Anyway, the object of the game was to search through the trashed hotel, and they had to find keys, wallet, and cell phone in the fastest amount of time. They had 5 minutes to find the items and then exit the room. But they have to be as quiet as possible, and their noise will be measured and translated into points, and then they accumulate throughout the duration of their turn. And potentially, the more noise you make, the worse, or the more it harms your score, right? It impacts your total score, and the lower the score, the better. So they show each of the teammates playing. They show each of their turns, going into the room. And ultimately, Christian wins the game. He had a score of 125, so that was the lowest score. So he won. Christian wins the first wild card competition, and that gives him safety for the week. So next, Frenchie shares another twist. He rolls out this big wheel with numbers on it. It has 1s, 2s, and only 2 number 3s on the wheel. So there's lots of 1s, there's probably less 2s, and then only 2 number 3s. So as the winner of the wild card comp, they get to spin the wheel and see how many teammates they can keep safe with them. So if they land on any number less than 3, he has to decide which teammate to keep safe. So Christian spins the wheel and it lands on one, and he chooses Xavier to save. And by the way, Christian's logic was sound because he based this decision off of the girls sharing that Frenchie said that they would be safe, right? Because he said, I'm not nominating any women. So Christian said, okay, that means the women on his team will be safe, Alyssa and Sarah Beth. So in his mind, he said the girls are safe, so it only makes sense for him to save Xavier, which is smart gameplay, right? And Christian is not only showing that he's a threat with competitions, but he's strategic as well. So we're going to see more of him. He's going to, if not already, become a bigger target in the game because he can win competitions and he can think. He can be strategic. He's logical. He's not emotional. At least not now. And again, I have to remind myself that we're still only in the first week, and a lot of this happened on day 2 or 3. I mean, it's just a lot of gameplay left. So we'll see. So after the wild card comp, they show Frenchie roaming around, looking paranoid and stressed. And if you watch the live feed, you already know that this is a pattern with Frenchie. He runs around that house looking stressed, always talking, looking paranoid. He's erratic. He's just emotional. I mean, he's so paranoid. And I can see why he's stressed in this instant because he promised too much on day 1. And now who he had left to choose from, that target is now safe. So he's pacing back and forth in the bathroom. By the way, the house bathroom has a door this season, and I hadn't paid any attention to that until now, until last night's episode. So that was distracting. But anyway, going back to Frenchie. So you can see his paranoia growing and growing. And he's getting more and more emotional and erratic. And if you let Frenchie tell it, he thinks he's being observant and he notices showmances brewing in the house between Alyssa and Christian, which is ultimately what he tries to use as a justification for targeting Christian, right? But now that Christian won the wild card, he's safe. So now Frenchie decides to go after what he perceives to be the closest person to Christian in the house, which is Alyssa. Excuse me. So Frenchie goes from nominating no women, no people of color, to now considering nominating Alyssa, who is a woman and a person of color. I mean, I just can't with Frenchie. So fast forward to the nomination ceremony. Frenchie ends up nominating Kyland and Alyssa. Both were promised not to be nominated. Excuse me. And don't get me wrong, like, people lie in this game or they switch their targets. I mean, that's part of the game. Things shift. People pivot. We get it. But I think where I see Frenchie's flaw in all of this is that he rushed to make these quick decisions, and it was based on emotion. There was no strategy. I mean, who in their right mind are going to promise, what did I say? 13 people in the house safety. Well, let's see. He had the 8 women, 3 of the 3 men from his group. So that's 11. He's the HOH. He befriends Brent now. So that went from 11 to him. That's 12. 13 people ultimately. So in essence, he promised 12 people plus himself. That's 1. So 13 people in the house have safety for the week. But in his mind, it's so ridiculous. The foolery all week on the live feeds. I mean, it has really riled a lot of BB Twitter up. But I want to stick to the review at hand here. I don't want to get off on a tangent. This is not going to be a live feed, type spoiler recap. I'm just going to stick with what was aired on the show last night. And ultimately, I just want to end as far as like Frenchie's mindset. He just has poor gameplay, period. And we're going to see that more and more. And I am so interested to see how he's going to now react when he's no longer HOH. He's going to be even more erratic and running around thinking, they're going to put me, am I going to go on the block? I can see it. The other thing that was annoying, in my opinion, was Frenchie's attempt to be profound in his storytelling. Like, he gave this speech, his nomination speech, where he said he had a dream that he went fishing to catch a big fish and he needed the perfect bait. I mean, okay, Frenchie, what? Like, what are you talking about? And you have different cultures at that table, different backgrounds. I mean, from where I come from, if you dream about fish, that means someone's pregnant. So it's just like, what is he talking about? I wish he just, I don't know. I wish a lot, but he just annoys me. And he just annoys me. I'll just keep it at that. In my opinion, he just has poor gameplay. And his analogy, it just was unnecessary. I'm so sorry. One day I'm gonna learn how to edit the coughing out, because I don't know how to do it on my tools yet. But so just bear with me. I'm new at this. Anyway, what else did I want to say? Oh yeah, Frenchie's not strategic. He's erratic. He's emotional. The move he made last night was more of a tactical move. It wasn't long term. You know, it's more short term. And I won't even give him that credit. It just was just illogical altogether. And I hope it won't yield him longevity in this game. He needs to go. And I hope he goes soon. I don't want him to make jury. I want him to be able to leave that Big Brother house and pick up on BB Twitter and see what people are thinking and saying. And I hope he just reflects on a few things. And depending upon what's aired in the upcoming days, maybe we'll get to talk about some of what I'm seeing on the live feed. If not, I'm thinking about doing a separate a separate episode on the podcast with some of this foolery I've seen on the live feeds. But I'm still thinking about that. Anyway, the episode ends with Alyssa understandably being caught off guard. She was shocked by being nominated. And what they didn't air in the episode last night was Frenchie and Colin. They were building a bond in the beginning where Colin and Frenchie had a final 2 deal. But yet he ends up on... It's just... oh, my goodness. Just... Frenchie. I think Azza said something on the live feed where she called it Frenchie's fun house. And I'm saying, no, it's Frenchie's foolery. It's just enough already. I'm ready for him to end this HOH. It's just enough. A few of the house guests, because of obviously they're in the house and they heard some of the promises and they're in the rooms when Frenchie is just talking away. They were confused, and then it fades out. You know, you have the BB song. The one thing I did want to add before I end here is that the producers of the show are very, very skilled with editing. The way they edited this episode to give the appearance that there was some type of strategy along with Frenchie's decision, that was astonishing. And it really takes skill set to pull that out, because Frenchie's behavior on the live feeds is just, I mean, it was too much to put in this 1 hour episode. And if you take out the commercials, what is it, like 40 minutes? It's too much that they would have to put in there to show everything. But the way they edited was favorable to Frenchie in terms of him having some type of strategy on why he made decisions. But at the same time, towards the end, it showed, you know, some of the flip-flopping he did. But on the live feeds, I mean, he looks foolish. His behavior is foolish. He's erratic. He's just a lot of things. I'm not a fan of Frenchie. The vast amount of viewers that watch the show only as it's aired on TV, they can walk away from the episode thinking Frenchie made maybe a decent play. Or maybe he's a decent player and he had good reasons for his nominations. But see, those of us who do watch the live feeds, we know Frenchie's behavior after this HOH competition. We know it's all foolery. So we know better. We all witnessed that erratic behavior over the last few days, and all those promises on day 1. I mean, if we break down the fact that he said no women, 8 people, no, the guys he entered the home with, that's 3. So that's 8 plus 3 is 11. So right away, 11 people were promised safety. Then he befriended Brent. So that brought up to 12, and he's the HOH. So out of 16 house guests, 13 people are safe. And then what they didn't show or air was that he promised no people of color. So out of the 4 people that remained, or now 3 people that remained, 2 of those 3 people were people of color. So now there's only 1 person to nominate. I mean, it just makes no sense. He's emotional, an emotional player. I think he damaged his game with his erratic behavior and this emotional play. But the thing about Big Brother, we all know as fans, there's still time for him to fix it. And not to mention, there's still a lot of game left to play. And this is the Big Brother house. Things can change between the next HOH, the POV, the wildcard twist, and any other twist that they now throw in the game, in the season, and throughout the season, So there's a chance for him to pivot and come out. I hope not. For me, I think he's just exhausting to watch. Some would say he's entertaining, and I guess exhausting and he can be entertaining. I guess both can be true. Who knows? I prefer for him to go before jury, preferably. So in summary, the wild card twist was introduced that brought Christian and Xavier safety for the week. Frenchie nominated Alyssa and Kylan. The POV is coming up, and that can most definitely change the nomination, so we'll have to see. I will be here for it all, and I'll come back to share my recaps and my thoughts on all of the gameplay that ensues. So be sure to come back and give me a listen, give me a follow, subscribe, leave me a comment, leave me a message. Like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. You can find me by looking for Chatter Out Loud. I have this podcast. I tweet. I'm on YouTube. So just look for Chatter Out Loud and you'll find me. I also have links to where you can find me in the description. So please check that out. All right. So my name is Danielle and you're listening to my podcast, Chatter Out Loud. Thank you so much for joining me. I always appreciate your support. That's all I have for you. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.